Okay, then let's start with the community meeting. Hello all together. Today we have one topic from Hardik and Prashant, which is support for labels, taints, and annotation on nodes in Gardener. Hardik, are you ready?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So sorry about the delay.
Yeah, no problem. We also have to wait for a few people. Here's also an internal workshop. That's why we are today less people than usual.
Okay. Just let me know when it gets started.
But I think you can start. So the meeting is recorded and we can share it afterwards.
Okay. So I'll start then.
Thank you.
Can you unshare so that I can share?
Yes, sure.
Thanks. Okay. So today I just want to talk about a quick feature in the MCM where we have support for annotation labels and taints propagation in the MCM. Let me give you a quick overview. So the problem we had was our cluster removes machines on several locations. Say, for example, the machine goes unhealthy, or there is some sort of auto scaling happening in the cluster which requires them to remove machines. So in this case, when such scenarios happen, we observe that the any annotations, labels, or taints that were added on the node object would be lost. So this causes hindrances to apps which are built on the logic, say for example, to avoid nodes with these taints or these labels, or controllers which are built to act on certain annotations on node objects, right? So what we thought is we need some mechanism, and this is not a problem in a typical Kubernetes clusters because we expect nodes to be constant in a Kubernetes cluster. But since we use MCM to manipulate nodes in a cluster, this falls as an issue for us. Right? So what we needed is a mechanism to maintain these annotation labels and tolerations for a set of machines, or even a single machine for that matter of fact. So what we did was pretty simple. We have the MCM spec. In the machine spec, we added a new notion of this node template spec. Now, what this node template spec contains is two things. One is any metadata related to the node template node object. So in our case, we only make use of labels and annotations here, and then any spec. So the node spec contains the taints field. So we are just importing this here. So now with this, what would happen is a machine would also understand what are the set of annotation taints and toleration taints and labels that it has to maintain across for the machine, for the node that it is back, right? So this is what we did, and we also updated the MCM code to reflect this by introducing mechanisms to transfer this logic across machine sets, machine deployments, and machine objects and node objects. I have a quick demo to show how this works as well. But this all works fine for the MCM story, but it's still to be made use in the Gardener. We extended the same changes on the Gardener spec, where the worker node now has three new fields. If you see down below here, you'll see an annotation and label and taints. So for a given worker pool, you can actually have these three fields on top of the existing ones. Right? So that is the high level overview of what we have done. Let me show you a quick demo to demonstrate the same. So what I have is, for example, I'm taking one of the shoot clusters that I already have. I'm calling it just seed. It's just a dummy name given. So you see, this is your typical shoot spec, right? Okay, let's just have a look at the nodes beforehand. So I'm on the terminal up and below. I've been connected to the same cluster, right? Let me just do a list of get nodes, right? This is the list of get nodes. Now let me take one node and show you what it looks like. So at this point, this is a node object. There are a lot of stuff you see. The labels, okay, there is a set of labels, there is a set of annotations, that already exists. There is no taints in this particular on this particular node object, right? What to just show that, to have a watch over it, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a watch over one particular node object in this cluster, which matches with this, just for you to be aware, right? I'm taking this machine with this P2 right here, and I'm getting the YAML of it, and I'm going to grep on taints, labels, and annotations, right? And for 10 lines after it. So I'm just going to have this watch. So at this point, you can see what are the taints, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to add some labels, annotations, and taints for this node object, right? Not that it's for all node objects, just I'm having watch for one. So these nodes are backed by this. So if you see, this is the shoot YAML. So this is the worker group where we have an autoscaler of 2 to 5. So what happens is now I can add a new field. Let's call it labels. I'll pick a dummy one. Let's say dummy test, right? And I'll update this. So once this happens, there would be a reconciliation happening. You can see the cluster has been reconciled. And once the reconciliation, this changes, basically the gardener has to propagate them to the MCM, right? Yes, it should be out here sometimes. Takes a couple. You can see here. The dummy test label is here, right? Similarly, what I'll also quickly do is, so I'll just add some taints. Is foo value is our effect is no schedule. Capitalize is it? Okay. So once this goes through, takes a couple of minutes, but you should be able to see this. And this exists for all these nodes, not just this one, because it applies for the whole worker pool, which is at this point a single worker pool in this cluster. We could have multiple worker pools. So you could have two worker pools with one with these taints and one with some other taints. So you can see now this node object reflects this new taint. What I can also show you is, say for example, in the terminal below, I'll just go and edit this node object. This is a node. Let me try doing something. Let me try to just maybe let me try removing this. But you see, still I'm having a watch. It still remains because the MCM has reconciled it. I'll show you how this works even later. I mean, like right now it looks like okay, it just didn't work. But in essence, in reality, behind the MCM is actually reconciling it and applying. The same I can do even if, say for example, I update it to something else, say test2 instead of test. It wouldn't work because it's still being reconciled. So if you want to make these changes, you'll have to go back to the dashboard, just go here, and if you see here, you'll have to change it to say dummy test2, and in the next reconciliation you will see that this test would change to dummy test2, right? What is also interesting to remember is we are only maintaining the taints tolerations, taints, annotations, and labels, which that we have added. See here, you can see it has changed to test2 right now. And what is important to note is, say for example, I go and add a new label myself over here. Let's call it something elect2. So you will see this label comes, right? But say for example, I go and edit this node object again, and you will see this change is not propagated back to the spec. The spec still contains only the ones you have added. So the reconciliation is only top down. So machine deployments to machine sets to machines and to nodes. So whatever you add on the nodes don't go back to the machines, right? So if say for example I go and delete this label, it doesn't, it gets deleted, right? It doesn't get reconciled. So that's what. So you can add all these labels on the Gardener spec or the machine deployment, and it will be propagated until the node. But whatever you add or make changes to the node doesn't affect the uh, things up. So let me give one final thing to keep in mind. So say for example, I now go and update this and I remove these labels and taints. Right? Now removing this doesn't necessarily mean that it will be removed. Let me finish the whole reconciliation. You will see that the labels, taints, and annotations still persist. And this is because, like I mentioned earlier, the reconciliation only takes care of adding or updating any new changes. It doesn't take care of deleting any. Say, for example, if you delete one of the taints on the shoot spec, it will not delete them on the node object. You will have to manually go and delete them. This is because this logic is only added is only yeah, this logic only works one way and it doesn't work the other way. So this is because it's more hard to implement the two-way sync and it requires more thought into. And this is the first kind of, so you can see right now, you can see that the label still exists, annotate taint still exists, and the reconciliation has gone through, right? But say for example, you want to remove it permanently, what you will have to do is you'll have to manually go and try to delete this, try to delete the taint, the taint, it. Now you should see it disappears. Now the MCM neuroconquer reconciles because the machine object doesn't contain these labels and taints. So I think that covers most of what I wanted to demo.
Will this be also changed in the future that you all can also delete it and it will be propagated, or will you in the future stay with the manual deletion?
We will give more thought into it, but it is a little complex logic to implement. And actually there is some conversation with the community also going on these same directions on the machine API. And I think people are not able to conclude on what this should look like. So as a temporary workaround, we have made this, and maybe in future we'll try to accommodate if it's possible.
Okay, thank you.
But that also brings, so from technical standpoint, it's true, but then there is also a concern that the taints, the labels, these features are basically used for manage the real workload. And if from the shoot spec user mistakenly delete something, then it might also end up very disrupting. So if you mistakenly remove a taint from the machine which should not be removed, then the shoot spec will basically affect the entire machine deployment with all of the nodes and so on. So that was also one thought that we had in mind, that whether it's really a good idea to go ahead and delete it from the top. So we wanted to be additive in nature here and try not to be authoritative. So being authoritative comes with some price. We also learn from some talks in the community. But it's still it's still an open question, and if you see a real value, probably we'll implement it somehow.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Okay, there are no questions.
So then, thank you, Hardik and Prashant. And then we are done here. So thank you for attending the community meeting, and hopefully see you next week, who is not on KubeCon.
Bye.
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 Bye.